On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, the federal buying machine grinds to a halt and creating one door for vendors to knock on. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. Week number 3 of the federal government shutdown begins Wednesday at 12:01 a.m. The federal government spending flow is starting to dry up now. Joe Jordan is president and CEO of Actuparo. He's former administrator of Federal Procurement Policy. Alan Thomas is owner of Alpha Tango Strategies. He's former commissioner of the Federal Acquisition Service at the General Services Administration. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for joining me. What is starting to dry up now, Joe, and what is still flowing dollar-wise as the shutdown continues?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Francis. So, shutdowns are messy and inefficient and unhelpful, but what you've got now that we enter week 3, as you said, anything that isn't multi-year appropriation, programmatic no-year appropriation, things like that, agencies who squirreled a little bit of money away for that first 2-week period are really going to run dry. And so it's incumbent on contractors and folks who normally provide goods and services to the federal government to manage their cash flow, because invoices aren't being processed in a timely fashion, and that can have a real trickle-down effect on kind of the entire federal supply chain.
Unprocessed invoices are already starting to impact vendors, I imagine, Alan.
Oh, they are actually. I have a small business client who just the other day said, hey, I've taken out a line of credit for the first time, right? Because I'm concerned. I don't need to draw on it yet, but I am concerned, right, that I might have some unpaid invoices and I need to pay my staff, right? So I might have to dip into that line of credit to do it. So particularly small businesses are going to start to feel it.
At what point can we expect to see small businesses that just decide this is too much and we can't take it anymore?
Well, I think if you're a small business and your primary client is the federal government, I think they're going to hang in there quite a long time, right? And probably go to extraordinary measures, right? Would be my guess. But for the government for a while now has been saying they want to attract new entrants, right? Folks who have good ideas in the commercial sector that are innovative, right? They want to bring them into government. So if you're kind of new into government and this is your first taste, this might leave a bad taste in your mouth. As the Secretary of War said, this is a bad look for the federal government.
Well, that's where I wanted to go next, that the long-term impact on the contracting base, especially the defense industrial base, after the government said for at least 15 years that I can go back to, Alan, we want more companies to come in. We want diversity in the base of all types. And it doesn't strike me this is a great way to go about doing that.
No, I mean this is uncertainty, right? And if you're a small business and this is a market, but not your only market that you're looking at, right? You might look at this market and say, I don't know if that's something that I want to play in, right? If I'm going to have this sort of perturbation in the market, maybe I pull up stakes and just focus on the commercial side of my business.
Are you hearing that from the vendors that you work with, Joe?
Oh, absolutely, Francis. Yeah, it's tough. And I think Alan hit the nail on the head that a lot of businesses who are primarily federal contractors are going to try to suffer through this. And so I would encourage them to track all of their expenses from stop work orders and related kind of government inefficiency, because you can sometimes submit a request for equitable adjustment and get some of that money back if you've survived this period. But those innovative tech businesses that we need to stay one step ahead of our adversaries in the Department of Defense, or to improve the service delivery to our citizens through the non-defense agencies, if they're largely a B2B business and they were looking at this like many of Alan and my clients do, this is not helpful for the government or the country.
Mm-hmm. What's the best possible outcome at this point for a company that's trying to figure out how to navigate through this, Joe?
Yeah, so again, tracking your expenses that are shutdown related, managing cash flow because of the invoice processing timelines we talked about, clearly communicating with your employees, because look, there are 600,000 furloughed federal employees, so client communication to your federal customer may be fractured, but your employees are scared and worried about what's going to happen to them too, and that sort of communication can be really important. And then just make sure you understand what your obligations are in each of your contracts, so that you're able to follow those.
There are still some folks in your former agency, Alan, at General Services Administration, that are still on duty and responding to the flow that still exists. What's that like in your view to try to deal with folks from the contractor perspective who they know are not getting paid and are are operating under kind of adverse circumstances right now.
It's tough times for all. I like Joe's response there, where he said focus on people. If you're running a business, right, think about your employees and communicating with them. I would say that from both the government perspective and the vendor perspective, keep talking to each other, right? People sort of remember, you kind of remember like the best of times and the worst of times, right? And so keeping those relationships up, I think, is important. You know, my guess is folks at GSA are still communicating with people in industry, right? Look, this is not unprecedented. There have been shutdowns before, right? Joe's been through one, I've been through one, right? That have lasted longer than what we're currently in. Mm-hmm. The forecast looks a little bleak now, but this is not unprecedented, right? So people have some sense for how to manage and work through this.
Joe, what should companies start to think about now, anticipating at some point, theoretically, the agencies will reopen and work will start to ramp up again? What should vendors be thinking about now to prepare for that effectively?
Yeah, to continue the theme about how much of this is human, understand that your federal customers, when they return to the office and get settled in again, which hopefully will happen. I know there are rifts that the current administration is contemplating. They're going to have a lot of catching up to do. Mm-hmm. And so you as a business owner are going to want those invoices processed fast for good reason, so you can pay your suppliers and your employees. You're going to want to know about that next contract. You're going to want to know, based on whether it's continuing resolution or a new omnibus appropriation, what contract, what needs does that understand that the people you're talking to are already going to be overwhelmed on those first couple of days. And so have a very collaborative tone to re-engaging your federal customers. And then again, continue to manage that cash flow, because it usually takes a while for this whole process to kind of get through the snake, so to speak.
Alan, how can I help you? Sounds like the best way to sum up the advice that Joe just gave.
I think that's right. Sometimes the best help is, hey, when we're back, don't send me an email on Monday. Send it to me on Tuesday, right? Because my inbox is overloaded on Monday, right?
Right. As people get back, and especially on the government side as they get back to work, you've both been through this before. What did you learn when you came back to the office, Alan? I'll start with you, that maybe you weren't expecting once to get back to when you turn things on again.
So for me, it was a little bit different situation. Because when I was at GSA, I ran the Federal Acquisition Service. They were a revolving fund, right? The Acquisition Services Fund. So we hardly furloughed anybody. And what was technically the longest shutdown in history, right? 35 days was a partial shutdown. So GSA was in a little bit different position. We did, I would say, take care. GSA services other agencies, essentially, right? Agencies are GSA's customers. Many of those folks were on furlough, right? So while many of the folks in the Federal Acquisition Service didn't have to go anywhere and continue to work and get paid, they had to be a little bit sensitive, right, to their customers. I think the message we gave was, hey, we've been doing everything we can while you were away to make sure that your programs stay on track. Right? And then so when people got back, we felt like, oh, we were a little bit of a force multiplier for them while we were out. So I was in some sense lucky in that I didn't have a bunch of people who were on furlough.
Mm-hmm. Joe, what did you learn from the 2013 shutdown?
Yeah, so our shutdown was 17 days, and I was at the Office of Management and Budget at the time helping run the kind of execution of that. So when things got turned back on, day one was actually my first day off in almost 3 weeks, and I had a young kid at home, so I took a nap for a second. and then what I would say is the takeaway is, like, the week or two after, how quickly the federal employees, with the help of contractors out there, were able to get operations back to normal, a state of normalcy. Mm-hmm. Folks really did come together and understand that a budgetary disagreement between two parties in Congress is not about the agency's ability to execute its mission or the importance of that mission. And I was really impressed with how quickly both federal employees and their industry partners got things really going again.
Do you think there's a multiplier there, that amount of ramp-up time that's required is exponential? 17 days was your shutdown. Yeah. 35 was Alan's shutdown. If this one goes more like Alan's than yours, is that going to be harder to get back up to speed after it's over?
Yes. It's not exponential, in my opinion, or in what we've seen, but there's a multiplier effect. So on October 14th in that 2013 shutdown, okay, you're hitting the semi-monthly payments, military payments, folks who are furloughed or missing their first paycheck, and that's when kind of Congress broke and said, okay, we want to work something out. It took them 3 days to put together a continuing resolution that Speaker Boehner could get through the House, but that was it. Well, we're now at that point. If we get through the next 72 hours and remain kind of in this not really speaking and negotiating standpoint, I worry it will be at least Halloween. And yes, it therefore takes a longer amount of time. Federal employees have, or their concerns are exacerbated. Their true financial impact and harm is exacerbated. And that back then we said, when you come back, you will get paid. So it's managing the cash for the period of the shutdown. The current president said, well, we've looked at that. We're not sure that is the case. So think about what they're going through. And yes, each additional day, week that goes by, I think takes their mind off, okay, when I'm back in my seat, how do I get my agency pumping again?
What does that mean potentially for the long-term operations of organizations like FAS, like OMB, and others across the government, Alan?
Well, I think there's a little bit of a psychological toll. If you're a federal employee, it's been a tough year, shall we say, right? With a lot of change, and this to me sort of feels like the icing on the cake, if you will, right? So I think Joe's point is well taken, that there's just a little bit of a different climate out there. So even when people come back, they might not be in quite the same frame of mind, right, that they would have been in a different environment, and that certainly can take a toll on an organization. I will say, look, federal employees, by and large, are mission focused, right? They really like their work. They identify with it. I think most of them, when they get back, when the shutdown gets resolved, and it will, they'll be back and they'll be putting in full effort, right? But I think you do have to take into account a little bit the kind of overall climate, right? Which is a little rainy if you're a federal employee. Let's be honest.
Yeah. How do you respond to that as a leader, Alan? One of the best. I'm not even talking about policy or governance. It's, I guess, the soft skills is the term that a lot of people use about how you interact with those people to help them understand that you want them to feel like you appreciate the work they're doing.
Yeah, look, if I was in a chair right now in the government, right, I would be focused on saying, look, we've been through a pretty significant period of reform, right? And the focus has been on trying to create a government that works better and costs less. You're here. You're an important part of what we're doing. Need you on the team, need you to play your role and be excellent at your role, right? So you can be for change, you could be for reform, but you've got to also be for the people that are on your team. And I think that would be an important message for a leader to deliver when everybody's sort of back and things are up and running again.
Seems like you like the sound of that, Joe.
I agree with everything Alan said. The only thing I would add is during the period of shutdown, I hated the phrasing essential and non-essential personnel. That is not what it is. You are exempt from the Anti-Deficiency Act, or you are not. And yes, it has to do with your position's influence on protecting life and property. But make sure you're not playing into that narrative and creating this division within your workforce of people who think they're essential and people who fear they are not. And then once you're back, I would say exactly what Alan said. I thought it was great.
Okay. I know that maybe you don't want to do a prediction. Joe will do anything I ask him to. How long do you think?
After Halloween, first week in November.
Yeah. Any thoughts, or you want to pass?
Veterans Day.
Wow. That's a long one. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. It's great to have both of you on the program.
Thanks.
Alan, Joe, appreciate it. You can read more about acquisition during and after the shutdown on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com.